Hello, everyone. We are here with a doozy of a chapter. I'll call it.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. But before we get to that, we do have a few reviews to go through, so we'll go ahead and get onto that.
All right. Atomical. Hey, hey. Hope your little break was swell.
We had a pretty good vacation, I'd say.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
Been a while since I left a review, but the reasoning behind it is that I don't see a point in doing so. I
Uh-oh.
didn't have anything to say. And to be honest, in the mindset I was in, I didn't have the strength to read something so beautifully comprehensive. Oh,
Okay.
that was kind.
Thank you.
All right. I hope you're doing okay.
Hope you're doing. Maybe you take a vacation.
Yeah. At some point, I intend to go back and read them just so I can understand, but I'm tired and I came here to see someone wake Kurai up.
Someone did.
I have been satisfied and will now make my departure. Ciao. All right. Thank you, Atomical. Hope everything is good and that you get some rest. I know how that is. All right. Light Hero Kaiser. Most interesting, great chapter, mate. Can't wait for more. Kaito. Kurai needs help, and so does Izuku for the preview. If the preview is anything to go by, light.
Indeed. Hammering away at a piece of metal on an anvil.
Kaito. Really? You're making a weapon right now?
Yes, it helps keep me calm. Keeps hammering away.
Kaito. Weirdo.
Throws an energy blade at him, then keeps hammering away. Shut up. I'm getting some major Haganezka vibes here.
You nutter. Yeah, absolutely. Blade Hero Light and Bow Hero Impact signing out.
For those of you who don't know who Haganezka is, go watch Demon Slayer. He's hilarious.
Yes, he's probably one of my favorite parts of that show.
I think he's your favorite.
If not my,
I think he's. If he's not your favorite part of the show, he's your favorite side character.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Oh yeah. All right, Silly Kita. This may be one of the single most depressing pieces I've I've seen written by your hand, sir.
Oh boy.
Oh, you haven't come on the current chapter yet, clearly.
Boy.
But perhaps depressing is the wrong word to use. You've shown us plenty of stories with death, heartbreak, tragedy of other sorts, so darker subjects aren't something new to see from you. But I think this, even more than your Red Swordsman series, has shown a very steady and, dare I say, believable progression into the realms of lost sanity for a protagonist.
Yeah, with the Red Swordsman, it's an it like. Sue me, I'm morbidly fascinated by the process in which one can lose one's sanity.
I think because it's when you've come back from the edge, it's,
I think
exploring mental health is.
I think there's two. Yeah, I personally, I think there's two ways that it really happens. Is like, I think it was the Joker who was like, maybe he was like. He was doing something to Commissioner Gordon where he was saying all it could take is one bad day to turn someone to turn people into someone like me, and I think like that's kind of the direction that I went with the Red Swordsman series. But with this one, I kind of wanted to do a more gradual one, like just repeated set of circumstances. Each one and each tragedy that happens isn't necessarily worse than the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes it'll be really, really bad, and then sometimes it'll be like kind of bad, but it's like if the really bad stuff hadn't happened, this one may not have affected them as much. Because everything just keeps getting compounded.
And yeah, it's just kind of chipping away at him. And I think also something to keep in mind is the resolution or the progression into this breaking point and out of it is going to be very different from Red Swordsman as well, because he's Kurai's a completely different person. Yeah. They may have some similarities as far as the intensity of their personality, but which I think is clearly taken from a little bit from a piece of you, because you're a very intense person. But no, I think that's definitely a good point, that I think it's more emotionally close to home.
Yeah.
Because, Red Swordsman is both worlds are fantasy, obviously, because we have quirks on one side and then you have SAO on the other. Yeah. But with the world of SAO, it's more fantastical. Yeah. In a way, just because we're used to the idea of superheroes, and aside from the quirks, the world works pretty similarly to ours. Yeah. So and they're not in a 24/7 life or death situation, right? Yeah. The world is still going, and it's not, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. think I finished. Okay. In any case, you've certainly made Kurai's level of crazy feel like its own thing, as opposed to a rehash of Mataris. He's a lot more quiet, which makes his outbursts.
You skipped a bunch.
Oh, did I skip something? Sorry.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll pick it up. So it says, as opposed to Mataris' more sudden thrust into insanity, this turn of Kurai's psyche has been far more subtle and less episodic. Though that's not to say that we haven't seen bits and pieces of this coming before now. Okay. So, perhaps the steadier approach to this breaking of the mind is what made this chapter stand out more effectively to me. The suddenness of it. I had thought that Kurai had already vented his latest fit of dysfunction, as it were, when Mina and Deku talked him around, but this chapter has concisely wiped away that notion. Even with him being talked down by his brother by the end of it, it's pretty clear to me that this will be far from the last time that we have to deal with Kurai's new outlook on life in general. I don't know that I buy him walking away from the hero life for good, and if he does make a return, I am admittedly very interested to know the how of that occurrence. Okay, so I guess
that's
so it's interesting they bring it, because like I've been trying to be gradual with it, but I guess I would have had to hit a point where it's just like, no, now we're catapulting it.
Well, yeah, because once someone reaches that breaking point and you've crossed that boundary of losing your cool, like, I mean, I think from experience I can say too, it's like once you've lost your cool in a certain situation with certain people, it's much harder to go back to the having boundaries, I guess. And so he's
setting those boundaries for himself.
Yeah. Especially when the pain hasn't gone away yet.
Yeah. All right, now we're to the
okay. In any case, you've certainly made Kurai's level of crazy feel like its own thing, as opposed to a rehash of Mataris. He's a lot more quiet, which makes his outbursts and threats stand out in terms of tonality when he makes them, as opposed to the walking pressure mind that is the Red Swordsman. Yes, where just about anything at all could set him off. As long as people didn't provoke Kurai, he didn't lash out, whereas Mataris seems to go looking for reasons to pick fights.
You are not wrong.
Just some side notes I had when comparing the two of them in my head while reading this. Yeah, no, that's a really good thought.
Yeah. I wasn't really able to put in like I knew that there were different ways to set the two of them off. But that's a really good way of putting it. Like Kurai's like don't poke the bear.
Yeah.
Like Mataris will go looking for trouble. Kurai's just like, leave me alone. We don't have any problems at this point. But if someone
continues to
if
push
someone
buttons,
keeps pushing buttons, then he'll get in your face.
Yeah. All right. And next, we got our sassy boy back on his feet. This was a big bummer chapter, but I am certainly left with a smile on my face knowing that Akurui is no longer in imminent danger.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that Akurui would be having a bigger role in the story following Kurai's death, and despite the resurrection stunt, it seems you knew better than to shift the kid off into the background. I mean, if Kurai really does stay off the hero game, it certainly opens up room for Akurui to take center stage as a new main protagonist alongside his future Eri.
Not a bad thought. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. To put any concerns to rest, Akurui will continue to have a more prevalent role in the story going forward. I don't know that I would go so far as to call him a main character.
Well, here he goes on. Well, he doesn't have to be the main character. I just hope he's not going back into the background.
Oh yeah, no. He's not going to go. No, he's he's not going to be involved in every single chapter, but he's going to be in more often than not going forward.
Awesome. Can you scroll down for me?
Oh yes.
You're good. Cannot see the words. Okay. I definitely thought that Mina was going to break up with Kurai there for a minute. So nice job on manipulating my fear factor. That would have taken this chapter straight from Bummerville to Joyless Junction. That's pretty good. I definitely thought that Mina was going to break up with Kurai for a minute. Oh, sorry. I'm dyslexic, guys. You know this. In any case, I'm going to guess that whether or not Kaya's really done, this next part of the story is going to be more about Eri trying to fill in his shoes as the wielder of One for All. Sorry, guys. Woo! As a wielder of One for All, as well as fit into this modern era alongside people she's looked up to for years, who now happen to be the same age as her. This should be interesting in its own right.
Yeah, figuring out those dynamics
that would be awkward and weird.
It is awkward and weird, and I'm having to do some jump ropes to figure out the dynamics there.
Some Back to the Future shenanigans over here.
All
right. As always, you have my attention whilst I await the next installment of the story. Here's hoping that our heroes have hit the lowest point of the valley and can now begin the upward climb, or at the very least, go sideways for a bit.
Happy writing to you, sir.
Thank
you, I appreciate
that. Thank you, silly Kita.
Yeah, it's how do I?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, Joe Clone. Oh, yikes! Heavy. This chapter hit hard on everything. Kurai is not well. He will not be unless he starts taking steps to improve. I'm glad that's the lesson he's learning. Future Eri rewinding Akurui was a genuine surprise, and I love her for it.
It's interesting that he says that's a surprise. If I'd been reading the story, I would have just assumed that would have been a given.
I guess.
I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody. I'm just like as soon as I figured out I was bringing a future Eri into this, I was like, okay, one of the first things she's got to do is this.
Okay. Oh.
But yeah, that's why this is important, so I can, see things from outside my own head.
Yeah. More surprising is that she gave Kurai his lost arm again. Yeah, that one caught me off guard. I was like, why? He's a brat. He doesn't deserve it. Just kidding.
That's her hero.
I know. That's something not many, if any, can claim happened to them. Maybe Dr. Kurt Connors. But we know what happened to him.
Yeah, no, let's not do that.
Dr. Connors? Oh, sorry.
Hey, Dr. Connors. Hello, Peter.
Oh, gosh. The couple scene was very emotionally serious. I am so impressed by how they both managed to get their thoughts out without any breaks in their teenage moods. Yeah, that's a big one. This was eerily mature of both Mina and Kurai, and I can't help but imagine Mina bursting into tears after she closed that door.
She definitely did.
Definitely. Did. I mean, she
just didn't want him to. She didn't want him to see. She didn't want him to see it.
Yeah, Mina generally wears her heart on her sleeve, so yeah, that's definitely the case.
She's in this weird spot where she's like, she's upset with him, but she also doesn't want to make things worse for him either.
All right, what comes next though? Why is Deku losing his cool? Finding out next time can't come soon enough.
Well, I won't keep you too long on that, but yeah, this. Oh man, this next chapter.
All right. Thank you, Joe Claude, and everybody else who left a review.
Thank you for your reviews, guys. We really appreciate it. We'll go ahead and let you get onto the story.
I hear the rain start to fall as it turns to a pour. We're here again in this storm, but we've been here before. I see the street signs warning, telling me that I have no other place I could go. Feel like I'm stuck in motion, can't find balance, I'm living in a vertigo. Everything is nothing like before. I've tried to hold it together, clinging on to memories I swore that I could hang on forever. But the end of the road wasn't far. I let go and I suddenly woke in my bed. Rubbed the haze from my eyes. I've always hated goodbyes.
One's worth. I don't think I can do this. I'm not giving you an option. Kurai gave his brother a sidelong glance, though the other boy neglected to return the look as they felt the elevator descend. Eri had already gone down to the common room ahead of them with the news that their classmate would be joining them shortly, leaving Akurui to all but drag his sibling to the lift so that he could be made to face his friends. It was a prospect that filled the resurrected teen with dread, given what he had done the last time they were all in a room together, but he also knew that Akurui would not hesitate to clock him over the head again if he tried to back out of the apology that he owed them. The ding that announced their arrival on the ground floor caused Kurai to visibly flinch, but Akurui was showing no mercy. Moving behind his brother, he gave him a rough shove out the door as the door opened, along with the terse words, "Get your ass out there." So it was that Kurai stumbled into the common space to be confronted by the sight of everyone in his class, plus future Eri, all quiet and apparently waiting for him with a mixture of expressions. Some seemed wary of him, others looked worried, and some even looked hopeful. However, Kurai was nothing less than surprised when Bakugo walked up to him, his expression unreadable as he came to stand less than 3 feet away from his rival. Before Kurai could say anything to break the awful silence that had filled the room, Bakugo's face twisted into a scowl before he stepped forward and slugged Kurai in the stomach hard enough to drop him to his hands and knees with a hard grunt as the wind was driven out of his lungs. "That's for giving up on being Kai." The blonde snorted as several of the others moved to interfere, just in case they were about to have a fight on their hands. "I should have done that on Nabu, saved everyone this embarrassment you've become." "Bakugo, what are you doing?" Ojiro shouted. "He's had enough already," Yang added. Kurai, however, waved them all back and shook his head as he tried to refill his body with the air that he needed. When he could breathe well enough to speak again, he wheezed out, "I don't have to justify my decisions to you." He inhaled deeply again before adding, "If you want to prove that you've surpassed me, wait for Izuku to master Energon and then challenge him." "Idiot," Bakugo snapped as he walked away. "Wasn't Energon that I needed to surpass." Kurai soon felt strong hands helping up to his feet, and without even looking at the owners, he knew who had come to his aid. After all, they had both helped him get up before. "You don't have to do this," he said in a low tone. "It's only natural that we help our friend up when he's fallen," Ida said as Kurai reluctantly allowed his gaze to meet his oldest friend's. "You've stood in front of us, taking on every obstacle that might hurt us at every chance you could. It's time you learn to let us support you when it's your time to rest. You definitely deserve that gut shot, but it wouldn't be very manly if I just left my friend on the floor when he needed help," Kirishima added with the faintest hint of a smile. "By the way, your arm's looking pretty good." "Wow, it really did grow back," Jiro said as a few of the other students gathered closer to Kurai, who regarded them with haunted, wary eyes, as if he were waiting for someone else to gut punch him. "Eri regenerated it for me," he said softly as Todoroki came the closest to him and his helpers. Lowering his gaze, Kurai then murmured, "I'm sorry, everyone." He knew that if he waited any longer, his meager courage would wear out, and he would never be able to say what needed to be said. "For what?" Todoroki asked in an equally somber tone. "I'm sorry I was so harsh to all of you, when no one did anything to deserve it, especially from me," he said, his body trembling slightly as he bowed from his waist and spoke. "I took out my anger on all of you because you were just the easiest targets, and that was wrong of me. I wanted someone else to feel just as bad as I did, and it made me act cruelly. I regret what I did, and I won't do such a thing again, regardless of whether or not you can forgive me. I hope that each of you can find it in yourselves to pardon my actions, but I will understand if you cannot." There was silence for a brief moment before an unexpected voice broke it. "Revelry in the dark," Tokoyami murmured as he strode forward, coming to stand next to Todoroki while Kurai straightened up and looked at the raven-headed boy with a dull curiosity. "Long have you battled demons within yourself, Hikari, and for many years you have always managed to succeed in your struggles. The other night was your first taste of true defeat from the enemy that is your own self, and such a loss is always the most difficult to recover from. From what I myself have experienced, I know that such adversity is not overcome by my own strength, but only with the help of those around who will lend me their support. I, for one, shall not allow you to sink into the depths of dark despair, but will extend a hand to my friend in distress as he needs it, so that he may return to the purifying light of clarity." As he spoke, he extended his own hand toward Kurai, who hesitated at the gesture. It took him a few seconds, but eventually he reached out and shook hands with his classmate, who gave him an uncharacteristically warm smile. "Thank you, Tokoyami. Thank you for fighting as hard as you did on behalf of us who could not," the bird-headed youth replied as they released one another. "Yeah, man, thank you," Kirishima said as he moved around to grab Kurai's arm and get his attention. "Everyone on Nabu Island and us would be toast right now if it wasn't for you." "I am glad that no one else was killed," Kurai said softly as his friend released him. "But I can't save you guys again." When there was a moment of somewhat stunned silence, he shrugged slightly and added, "I meant what I said when I told you guys that Kai is done. I don't have it in me to take up the fight again." From their reactions, it was clear that more than half of them had expected his return to good health, and his talking to by Akaduri would also mean that he was returning to hero work alongside them.
Before anyone else could say anything, Todoroki spoke up. If you believe that you've done all you can as a hero, you have a right to rest, he said, further surprising the others in the room. I'm disappointed that I won't have you as a rival any longer, but I'm honestly more relieved to see my friend alive and among us again. Your return is more than any miracle that I could wish for. A sentiment that I wholeheartedly agree with, Ida said as he laid his arm across Kurai's shoulders. I do hope that someday you will make a return to heroics, but even if that never comes to pass, I am more than content with the knowledge that we shall have a long time together in this world. Know that I will take up the oncoming fight in your name, and that you can rest easy in the knowledge that your actions will continue to inspire those of Ingenium for years to come. I appreciate the sentiment. Kurai sighed as he lowered his gaze again, but I wish you wouldn't fight on my behalf. If you have to fight, do it on behalf of people who need saving, not for someone like me. And what about the people who need you to save them? These words came from a scowling Izuku, which was enough of a surprise on its own, as very few people at present had actually seen him get angry before. Ignoring the others as he glared at Kurai from across the room, he added, That's what One for All is meant to be used for, saving others. I passed it on to you so that we could do that, and now you're just going to let it go to waste? You really think I made a mistake? Then tell me who to pass the quirk on to. Kurai said flatly. I'm sorry I put you through a window, and I'm sorry I can't be the hero you believed I could be anymore, but if you really feel so strongly about it, then please tell me who should be the one to receive the power next. Deku, it's okay, Eri said as she stepped to stand in front of the brunette before he could make a reply. He didn't let it go to waste, remember? I'm here to carry on the will that lives inside of One for All. He's earned the right to pass the responsibility on to another wielder. That's not the point! Izuku suddenly shouted, his eyes flaring deep purple as the air around him shuddered, and people around him began to take a pace backward in surprise. Kurai, seeing this, took a step forward before his friend yelled, I gave the power to you because I knew you could be the greatest hero of us all, and you proved me right when you fought to the bitter end on Nabu. Don't you get it? I don't want the power to be passed on to anyone else. Izuku, calm the hell down, Kurai shouted as he began to pale, his emotional and physical exhaustion forgotten in the heat of the moment. Don't tell me what to do! Izuku raged as his hair began to flicker between green and yellow colors. You don't have that right! Deku, look what you're doing! Ochako begged him, but Izuku's face was twisted almost beyond recognition as his anger continued to build at a dangerous pace. What's happening to him? Ida shouted as the room began to tremble. Before anyone could give an answer, Eri moved fast, darting behind Izuku and jamming two of her fingers on a soft point in his neck, causing his legs to turn to jelly and collapse underneath him, while also cutting off the pressure that had been building up in the room. Without a moment's hesitation, Akururi scowled and darted forward, waving the others back as he did so. Damn, I was afraid of this, he said as he examined the fallen boy, noting the slow trickle of blood that was coming from his nose. Eri, mind resetting him? Of course, she nodded as her horn glowed softly while the others looked on, still confused for the most part. What just happened to him? Mina asked as she came to stand beside Kurai, who was unconsciously massaging his temples as if remembering an old injury. Why did Energon... Remember how I used to go nuts if I let negative emotions get the better of me? Her boyfriend asked in response. That's pretty much what happened right here. But I thought Akururi fixed your quirk, Yayorozu asked as Eri's power quickly restored Izuku to the moment before he had lost control of his temper. That device I made was made to alter Kurai's neurology, not his quirk, Akururi said to interrupt her as he helped a groggy Izuku to sit up. We altered his body on a cellular level, not his quirk itself. I never foresaw a set of circumstances where Kurai would, pass his quirk onto someone else, and it was easier for me to alter his body as opposed to his quirk, so that's what I did. If we don't want Midoriya here to melt his brain whenever he gets worked up, which, as I understand it, happens pretty often, we'll have to remake the device that we used on my brother. Why did Deku collapse so quickly? Ochako asked as Izuku slowly blinked his eyes as if coming out of a deep sleep. It took Kurai longer to go down than when he went all out. Midoriya spent the last couple of years conditioning his body to endure the physical strain that One for All puts on a person. Akururi answered immediately. He spent very little time conditioning his mind for the backlash that a quirk might put on him. My brother trained himself for over half his life to maintain a lid on his emotions so that things like this wouldn't happen so easily to him. Midoriya simply doesn't have that kind of endurance. But you can fix him? Kirishima asked worriedly. Of course I can fix him! Akururi snorted as if the question were an insult to his intelligence. Even if I don't remember the entirety of my thought process leading to the complete product, I have the design for the device locked safe in here. So saying, he topped his head with a slim finger. I just have to make some adjustments to account for the differences in Midoriya's physiology, but I'm confident we can have those done sometime in the next couple of weeks. You're sure about that? Mina asked dubiously. I'm not going to be supercharging my quirk again, so it's going to take some time, but I'll get there. Akuduri answered with a slight shudder. I think I'll enjoy taking my time with the project now that I'm not operating under the threat of a ruthless countdown. He knows what he's doing, Kurai said quietly before anyone else could voice another concern. In an even softer tone, he added, more than most of us do anyway. Clearly, he had never thought that the weakness that had nearly killed him multiple times might come to harm his friend, and it had him even more rattled on top of everything else that had already been happening. Meanwhile, Akuduri was checking Izuku's eyes for dilation while he asked, You understand me, Midoriya? You with us? I hear you. He nodded as he fixed his gaze on the younger boy. Sorry, I lost my head for a second there. I was just so angry. Understandably so, Akuduri sighed. In a low tone that only Izuku could hear, he then said, Look, he's a dense knucklehead, but he has a right to do what he chooses with the power just like you did when it came to you. He's making the best that he can with his situation, so just cut him some slack, at least until the holidays pass, without starting a yelling match. With a wry smile, he added, If you two want to slug it out after school starts up again, I will make bank selling tickets to that fight. Per Akuduri's suggestion, Izuku went to lie down in his room to rest his mind. Even though he wasn't physically tired due to the rewind, he was rattled well enough that he didn't resist the idea. As he left, his classmates eyed him with something close to fear, save for Kurai and Ida, who were looking on with sympathy. As soon as the greenette was gone, Kurai said in a somber tone, It's not his fault. The guy almost blew up our building, Kaminari protested. How do you not get freaked out about something like that, especially after what You may not be able to help your emotional reaction, but trust me when I say he'll be more afraid than any of you are right now. The white-haired boy replied, Damn. I never thought this could happen. No, I suppose I should have considered it at the time. Given the circumstances, I'm surprised you had the wherewithal to act as you did, thinking clearly enough to pass your quirk on to Midoriya. Yaoyorozu pointed out. Yeah, I guess. Kurai murmured before turning to address the whole class again. Bowing deeply to them from the waist, he said in a clearer tone, I gave you all an apology for my behavior the other day. I also need to apologize for acting as I did on Nabu, for dying on all of you. I was impulsive, arrogant, and I didn't pause to consider what my death would actually mean for all of you. I thought I was looking ahead, but it turns out that I was being short-sighted when it came to the consequences. There was a brief moment of silence while he remained bowed before Todoroki spoke up. Would you act differently if you had the chance to do it over again? He asked. If I could find another way to defeat the villain, then yeah, I would have done something different, Kurai answered as he straightened up. Even if it meant that one of us died instead of you. Kurai paused again at the inquiry, knowing he'd been trapped. Seeing this, Todoroki nodded and said, Even if Midoriya had been able to pass the quirk on to someone else, none of us are as powerful as you. You were the best choice not only because of your friendship with him, but also because of your skills. Don't apologize for something you have no inclination or right to change, even if you had the chance. All right, Kurai not conceded. Sweeping his gaze across the room again, he asked, and in regards to my actions the other day? We can't understand what you've gone through, nor what you've lost in coming back here, Ida said with a negative shake of his head. While your actions were upsetting, I have no intention of holding a grudge against you for it. Had I been in your shoes, I'm certain I would have acted in a similar, if not worse, manner. You have my forgiveness, Tokoyami added. What the hell, it's Christmas time. Yang grinned as she came up and extended a fist to the boy. Do me solid, we'll call it even. Kurai nodded before tapping his knuckles firmly against hers, even as the others gathered around him, each of them saying that they too forgave him for his actions. Some of them still seemed a little wary of him, but they all seemed mostly relieved to have him a little closer to his old self than the half-mad boy who had initially appeared in place of their friend. There were even a few hugs thrown in the mix, first by Kirishima and Kaminari, then Ochako and Ruby. We missed you, the Gravity Girl said when she released him. We're glad to have you with us again. He gave her a slight shrug before replying, I'm glad to see all of you again, too. I may have spent a better part of eternity in a better place, but I swear I never forgot any of you. I can't remember a lot of the time I spent there anymore, but I know that there's a lot that I wanted to show you guys when we do go. I suppose if nothing else, we know that there's something to look forward to in the hereafter, Tokoyami commented neutrally. A hereafter that should be a long way off, Ida said as he adjusted his glasses. We all heard Aries' tale, and we now understand the stakes of the coming conflict. If we want to change the future, we must all be prepared to live for a good while longer. We will, Eri vowed as she folded her arms in front of her. I'll make sure of it. Kurai's face twitched with the barest hint of a smile before he said, I can see my future self made the right choice. How do you figure? You sound just like Deku right now, he answered. When we rescued you, he promised to shatter the future if that's what it took. If I recall, you were making that promise right alongside him, she replied with a sad little smile of her own. You sure you won't be able to keep it? I'm sure. He sighed as he cast his eyes downward and allowed his features to sag yet again. I can't take any more of it, Eri. The pain, the fear, the failures. I am glad that I've been able to do what I did, but a hero who goes into a situation unprepared to give everything that they have is only a liability to the people depending on them. I don't want to be that guy. Now, can we please drop the subject? Okay, she nodded. But you'll always be my hero. Following that, everyone started to interact in a less tense manner, though it could still be called a bit of an awkward atmosphere. There were still a lot of conflicting emotions that had been brought about by Kurai's violent death, followed by his startling resurrection and all the revelations that came about because of it. The students were still trying to process all these things, and it obviously couldn't be done overnight with a single apology from Kurai. Akudori did what he could to break the ice when he came back down, which helped his brother more than he thought it would have. In spite of all the lingering emotional soreness, by the end of the day, more of the students were smiling than not, and there was plenty of laughter going around. Most of this came from Kaminari and Sero, who were poking fun at Kurai while they tried to come up with careers that he could pursue after he gave up his powers to someone else. Under normal circumstances, he would have gotten irritated, but he let them have their fun for two reasons. One, he still felt that he owed everyone around him big time, and second, he knew it was their way of welcoming him back. He could be a therapist, Sero snickered. Physical or mental? Kaminari grinned in response. He seems qualified for both. Ha ha. Kurai snorted with the roll of his eyes, though the smile did not reach his eyes. Holding up his right arm, he wiggled his fingers and said, This is the qualification you're referring to? I don't think it counts anymore. Right, psychotherapy it is, Kaminari said before he jerked his head to the side, just in time to have one of Jiro's ear jacks narrowly miss him. All right, you're taking it too far, the punk rock girl said in a warning tone. Hikari, don't feel like you have to take that, okay? I don't really mind, he shrugged noncommittally. Honestly, I prefer this to a pity party, or any kind of party right now. Oh, don't tell me you're going to be hiding out in your room for the Christmas party, Kirishima said as he plopped down on the couch adjacent to Kurai and Sero. I was thinking about it, yes. I should think not, Yayorozu said as she came to stand next to Kurai. You may be transferring out of the hero course in the spring, but you are still a part of our class until then. This occasion is meant to be enjoyed by all of us, just like the festival in October. Your attendance is not optional. Was I just ordered to have a holly jolly Christmas? Kurai asked with a raised eyebrow, prompting several of his friends to laugh and Yayorozu to turn away. After all, it wouldn't do to let him see her smiling at the first joke he had cracked since being returned to life. You better, Akudori said as he came over from talking to Ida and Ochako. You and I are supposed to go see Mom on the 24th, so you better get your chin up in time for the visit. Hopefully after that I can stop cleaning up after your messes. Not really feeling the goodwill toward men over here. Ha! Yang laughed from across the room. Okay, how does she even hear that? If there's a pun in the room, I always know about it. Usually because you're the one making them, Weiss sighed with a roll of her eyes. Seeing the two of them, plus Ruby in the kitchen area, made Kurai realize that he hadn't seen a certain classmate of theirs yet. Where's Blake at? He asked with a slight frown. She hasn't been out of her room since you ran out the other day, Yang said heavily as she gestured for him to follow her. So, in other words, she's being Blake about it. He guessed while the other two Americans came closer so they could finish the discussion in lowered tones. Yep, pretty much, the blonde girl nodded. It's starting to look like a pretty Blake situation. Please stop, Weiss grumbled. I'm going to have to talk her out of this again, aren't I? When Yang nodded, Kurai let out a long, muffled groan before he said, I don't think that I'm up to it this time. After all, it'd be pretty hypocritical of me to try and talk her out of leaving the hero course now, wouldn't it? That's not what we're worried about right now, Weiss huffed. Honestly, how dense can you be? Considering all the head trauma that I've suffered, I could be a lot dumber, Kurai answered dryly. She's still blaming herself for all this, Ruby told him. I figured, but I specifically remember telling her not to do that. Any work you might have done to restore her confidence was gone the moment you died due to a wound that she inflicted, even if unintentionally, Weiss snapped. Blake has always had a hard time with blaming herself for every bad thing that happens around her, Yang said as she laid a hand on Weiss's shoulder in an unspoken message that told the albino girl that she needed to simmer down. Look, I'll call that favor you owe me even if you go and talk to her today. If anyone's going to get her out of the dumps, it's you. Seriously? He complained. Haven't you guys tried kicking in her door or something? I doubt Mr. Aizawa would appreciate the property damage, Ruby said with a slight shudder. That's not even taking into account what Blake might do to us if we broke into her place. The other two girls gave shudders of their own in agreement, leading Kurai to wonder what he might be in for if he did try to talk to the reclusive girl in her current mood. Eventually he shrugged and said, well, what's the worst that could happen? I've literally hit rock bottom for anyone who's been to the afterlife, so this ought to be a cakewalk. Cover for me with the others while I'm out, yeah. You got it. As they watched him head into the elevator, Ruby added in a lower tone to her sister, he didn't tell him the other reason why he's probably the best chance of getting her out of her funk. What would be the point? Yang shrugged as the doors closed in front of the revived classmate. She'd never do anything about it, so it's not like he needs a heads up. It just caused more trouble for all parties involved. And he hardly needs more trouble in his life at the moment. Weiss agreed. Open the door, Blake, Kurai said heavily as he stood in front of the reclusive girl's room. I'm hitting my limit on social interactions for the day, so I'd appreciate being able to go to sleep sooner rather than later. Go away. Her voice was muffled through the door, but it came through clearly enough that Kurai let out another sigh and rolled his eyes to heaven. Love to. But it seems like my pesky conscience is also making its way out of my coffin, he told her. He decided against mentioning that Yang had been the one who put him up to this, as it would probably just create more problems rather than solve the current one. I don't like talking through doors, so I'm going to ask you to open this on your own one more time before I get creative. Creative? She repeated, sounding like she was coming closer to the door. You really think breaking down the door counts as clever? No, I was thinking more along the lines of picking the lock. He tossed back as he leaned against the wall next to the door. It's been a while since I practiced, but I doubt it'll take me longer to remember how it goes. Why would a Hero Course student know how to pick a lock? Blake was standing in front of the door now, he was sure. Well, if you have a search warrant and you don't want the villains to know that the villains and the police have been snooping in on their business, you probably don't want to leave any signs by breaking and entering, he said dryly. Seriously, open the door before I have Yamama make me a lock-picking set. That is not why you learned to pick a lock. Fine, Akadori got curious one summer, and I somehow got roped into learning it along with him. Kurai deadpanned. Last chance to open up before I prove that I really can pick locks. I have a deadbolt. Go away, Hikari. My name is Kurai. You can't seriously still consider me your friend. The white-haired teen let out another sigh before he said, Yeah, I suppose that would be asking too much of you. You're right, I shouldn't have a claim to being your friend after I got myself killed and leaving you behind to suffer from a guilt that shouldn't belong to you in the first place. There was a clicking sound before the door was flung open and Blake appeared, her eyes red-rimmed and her hair disheveled. She looked as though she hadn't eaten in days, and her clothes hung loosely off of her like rags on a scarecrow. Shouldn't belong to me, she asked with a haunted gaze. I gutted you. I ran my sword all the way through your chest and pinned you to the street. We all heard the autopsy report. You died of asphyxiation when your first lung filled with blood, and the other one got crushed by that dragon head thing. Yeah, I remember. I was there. He muttered as he noticed that she was also paler than normal. I also suffered more than 24 other injuries, both internal and external. There's also the fact that Energon and One for All put together basically nuked my insides. Your sword didn't kill me on its own. My arrogance in believing that I could make the difference in that battle is what finished the job. But you did make the difference, she said hoarsely as her gaze dropped away from his. It's not arrogance if your skill is versed in your actions as opposed to just your words. You defeated 9, and if I hadn't stabbed you earlier, you would have survived the battle. You don't know that. I know that every time I'm around you in battle it almost costs you your life, she said miserably. I can't keep doing that. You don't have to worry about it, Kurai shrugged. I'm not staying in the hero course, remember? No one's going to be killing me again, least of all you. Blake stared at him for a few moments before she said, You can't quit. I can, I will, and I did. Aizawa was arranging for my transfer into general studies starting with our second year. After everything you told me after the summer camp, I'm not going to stand here and take career advice from someone who's trying to make up their mind about whether or not to kill themselves. Kurai suddenly snapped, venom in his tone causing Blake to flinch and take a step back. Do it and get it over with, or pick yourself up and live your life. Stop indulging in the I can't make up my mind crap, so I'll wait and see if I get lucky on the next one. There was a deafening silence on the hallway before tears started to leak out of Blake's eyes as she asked in a trembling voice, How did you know? Mostly because I'm not completely stupid. he said bitterly before his right hand shot forward and grabbed her left arm, while his other hand yanked her sleeve up to the elbow, revealing a series of angry-looking scab marks that could have only been made with a blade. There was also a linen wrap closer to her wrist that had spots of red in it, which he assumed was concealing a significantly larger cut than the other marks. Let me guess. You decided to stop chancing it with the razor, switch to your katana? None of your business. She mumbled as she took her hand back and covered the marks with her sleeve again. You're my friend, which does make it my business, he countered. You saw what me getting killed did to everyone. How much worse do you think they'd take it if you killed yourself? I just wanted the pain to stop, she said as her shoulders began to shake. By causing pain for everyone else, Kurai demanded. Yeah, I tried that route. Spoiler alert, it didn't work out for any parties involved. Letting out another long breath, he lowered his head before he said in a softer tone, They all love us too much to let us go like that. It's something we should be grateful for, but right now it just seems like a damn nuisance, doesn't it? What are you doing here, Hikari? Sorry, I don't know anyone by that name. What do you want, Kurai? I wanted to see if you would come out of your room for anything, he shrugged. Apparently you will. Now for my next trick, you're going to come back downstairs with me and assure your friends that you're not dead. I thought you said you were hitting your limits for social activity. I lied, he shrugged. I actually went past my limit about 5 minutes after just being down there, but I stayed because I owe everyone in there big time. The same is true of you, so let's get a move on. I'm staying up here, she said tiredly as she went to go inside of her room again. Good. Then Recovery Girl and the other teachers will know where to find you when I tell them they have a student try to bleed themselves to death, he said just before Blake started to shut the door. She halted her movements before she said over her shoulder, Are you blackmailing me? Yes. So if I go down, you won't report me at all? Not a peep. Isn't it against the ethics of a hero to blackmail their colleagues? She asked as she turned slightly to look at him over her shoulder. I'm not going to be a hero anymore, so let's call it a gray area, he answered. As someone who's been in a similar spot to you, let's just say that I sympathize and I'm willing to give you a chance to correct your behavior on your own. How'd that turn out for you? She asked in barely more than a whisper. The night that we moved into the dorms, Mina found me gouging out pieces of my skin and scar tissue because of the phantom pains in here, he said as he pointed to his right bicep. I wanted to take myself off the pain medication too early because I was afraid of developing an addiction, and she gave me an ultimatum. Either take my meds and the matter stayed between us, or she could report me to the teachers, who probably would have sent me to an intensive therapy treatment for PTSD. I chose the former, and I learned to lean on her instead of trying to shoulder everything on my own as a result. I got better. I don't have anyone like you have, Ashido, she said a trifle bitterly. No, you don't, he agreed. When she turned to fix an angry gaze on him, he shrugged again and said, That's because you don't need anyone like I do. You're stronger than me. The only one who doesn't see that is you. You don't know me well enough to say that. We've been through the same hellish battles, and you've always escaped without any life-threatening injuries, he replied. I'd say that makes you a lot stronger than me. That's not... My karate instructor used to have a saying. Kurai interrupted her. He said that when you're sizing up an opponent, be sure to check for scars. What does that have to do with... No scars means he's soft. Probably never been in a fight before, the boy continued. If he has one or two, that means he learned his lesson, figured out how to move before someone hits him again. The people with the more scars than that are the idiots who never learned how to dodge. Giving her another flat look, he said, I've accumulated nearly 40 scars, Blake, only 2 of which were made by your sword, and that was because all of us underestimated our opponent. Every one of those other marks were carved out because of my hubris, not your actions. I ignored everyone else's advice because I thought I knew best, because I believed myself to be strong, and that's what put me in a coffin. Objectively speaking, your part in my death was minimal, so do us both a favor and put on a shirt with sleeves that don't hang off so loose. What? We are both going downstairs to assure our friends that we're still alive, so unless you want to spend the entire evening checking over your shoulder to make sure that no one's noticed that trick up your sleeve, then wear something that won't cause a slip-up, so to speak, he told her as he started to walk away. You have 10 minutes to be downstairs before I call Mr. Aizawa and let him know what's going on. Why are you doing this? Blake asked before he got too far. If you're not trying to be a hero, trying to save someone, why bother with me? He raised an eyebrow as he turned back to look at her and said, You don't need to be a hero to want to help out your friend. You're worth too much for me to just let it go. I don't deserve to be your friend. Yeah, no one deserves that much misfortune, do they? He muttered. Too bad for you. I'm still too stubborn to let my friends off the hook. Now change into a damn Christmas sweater and get downstairs. Your 10 minutes started a minute ago. By the end of the night, Bakugo was the only one who refused to be a part of the hangout in the common space. Blake came down with 3 minutes to spare, and Kurai noticed that she had taken his advice and donned a shirt that was less likely to reveal her secret. Most of those scars should fade with time, except for the ones made by the katana. He thought as he turned back to give Sato a thankful smile as he handed him a plate loaded with Christmas cookies. She's smart enough to figure something out. Izuku came down later in the gathering to offer his own apologies to the class, which they forgave him for, mostly due to Kurai's earlier reminder that the experience had to have been more frightening for him than any of them. However, once he had finished his apology, he approached Kurai and said in a lowered tone, "We need to talk about One for All later. Let me know when and where." The other boy agreed in response. That was the only thing said on the matter for the rest of the day. Kurai spent the rest of those hours catching up with his friends and getting roped into multiple Smash tournaments. Sato and Yayorozu made confectionery delights, though they assured the others that they were saving the best for the Christmas party. It's nice to know how your resurrection scales in comparison to a celebration that happens once a year as opposed to, once in a lifetime, Akudori said with a snarky grin as he sat down across from his brother at one of the tables. "Twice in my lifetime, actually," Kurai chuckled wryly. "You're barely dead the first time, it doesn't count. And as the resident expert on the experience of death, I say it counts just as much the second time." Damn it, you got me there. Akudori sighed as he set his drink down. Kurai looked him up and down for a moment before he said, "You never answered my question the other day." "About if Eri erased my quirk?" his brother guessed. When Kurai nodded, Akudori shook his head in the negative and said, "You're still going to have to deal with the smart-ass hour, my friend." "So the tumor is still there?" "Yes." Akudori shrugged before he added, "Even without my quirk, it would probably still be there, so why give up my powers? Besides, you're all going to need this gray matter in prime condition for when the war begins." He tapped the side of his head as he said this. "Since you're ducking out, someone has to pick up the slack around here. You're not even a hero course student. You can't get involved. I'm actually going to be making use of my medical license as an assistant to Recovery Girl and double as a guest lecturer for the support lab during the next semester," Akudori told him, startling the other boy. "Say what?" "I spoke to Principal Nezu while you were unconscious," the younger brother told him. "We both decided that with the stakes being what they are, it'd be better if I'm close at hand to assist you guys. He's the first person I've ever met who's actually challenged me on an intellectual level, so I think it'll be an interesting work experience." "You're only just coming up on 13. You're already going to be a guest lecturer at the world's most prestigious hero academy," Kurai sputtered. "Look, whether or not you become a hero, the League is more than likely to come after me at some point, as Eri explained," Akudori said flatly. "Maybe it'll be for revenge as much as my quirk, but it's going to happen at some point. Now that we know what's coming, I can help beef up security and live in a place that's as safe as it's going to get. Don't you need a teaching license to be a teacher? Hence the term guest lecturer." The younger boy smirked. "It's not exactly a salary position, but my arrangement covers living expenses, which means that you'll be seeing a lot more of me more often." "You're not. Don't worry, I'm not cramping your style in this building," Akudori assured him. "I'll be living in the teacher's dorms like little Eri. Part of my arrangement is to also help take care of her." "Oh, thank heaven." Kurai breathed heavily. Would living under the same roof again really be so bad?" Akudori asked, pretending to look offended. "We only did it for 12 years. "Yeah. Longest 12 years of my life." "He shoots, he scores," Mina said with a slight grin as she sat down next to Kurai with a mug of hot chocolate. "Sorry, Aki, but your brother wins that round." It's Christmas time." The younger boy shrugged. "He's got to win sometime, and I'm feeling charitable. Don't try to cheapen my victory with a fake concession, you little weasel." Kurai scowled. "Couldn't help but overhear your discussion," Mina said before the two of them could get back into it. "Glad you'll be around, Akudori. I got a few pranks I wanted to pull for a while now, but this guy won't help me with the two-man jobs." She jerked a thumb at Kurai, who rolled his eyes in response. "I helped you swap the pistachio with wasabi and eat his lunch the day that we got to Nabu," he reminded her. "That was you!" Ida cried from the kitchen area. "Forget you heard that." "No!" Mina and Akudori shared in a round of chuckles while Kurai rolled his eyes upward, and Ochako and Yayorozu did their best to calm down their frustrated class rep. As the sound died away, however, Akudori turned back to his brother with a more sober expression before he said, "Mind if I ask something about the afterlife?" "Dad was there," Kurai replied with a slow nod before his brother could elaborate on his inquiry. Akudori took in a sharp breath before he was able to let it out as a slow exhale while hiding his eyes behind his hand. After a small lull of quiet, he wiped at them with the back of his hand and went on to ask, Did you guys ever talk about why he left that doctor's note in your binder?" "Yeah, I asked him about it," his brother answered. "He pretty much confirmed what we suspected. that it was his insurance policy in case something ever happened to him. It was his best shot at letting us find the answers without someone else finding out what he was trying to do. It was just one of several documents in that scrapbook of medical nature. There's some from my first aneurysm operation, for example, so it wouldn't look out of place there. It was pretty much the only way to prove that I had been born without a quirk, and therefore the only way to help me understand that something was wrong to begin with. Of course, he couldn't have known that I would end up so close to All For One's greatest enemy, but he knew that you're smart enough that we would have eventually put the pieces together. Why couldn't the guy have just written down a letter that explained everything? Mina asked with a slight frown. Would have been way easier to understand and way less of a headache to figure out. Not necessarily, Kurai said as he put a chin on his fist. If he'd left behind a letter, I probably would have been tempted to just rip it up, pretend like it never happened. The way he did it, I wound up getting curious and seeking out answers on my own, which forced me to accept the truth as I discovered it, instead of having it all thrown in my face at once. Our father knew you well enough to understand what kind of breadcrumbs to leave behind, Akuri murmured. That's some next-level Hansel and Gretel crap right there. Wait, what do witch hunters have to do with your dad leaving a clue for you? Mina asked with a frown. Witch hunters? Akuri asked with a puzzled expression. What do you mean? What do you mean, what do I mean? Mina tossed back. There's an old movie about Hansel and Gretel, the witch hunters, isn't there? What? Kurai sputtered before he shook his head rapidly. Mina, that movie is loosely based on an old nursery about two kids that a witch tries to eat after their stepmother makes their father dump them in a forest. That's terrible, Mina exclaimed. Why would anyone write that kind of story? Is this the one who made me binge watch the Saw series the weekend before the school festival and then had me go through Class C's haunted house? Kurai shot back. It's not like I wrote them. It was very late by the time everyone started to disperse back to their rooms, and most of them could hardly keep their eyes open as they made their way upstairs. Some people even had fallen asleep on the couches, Blake being one of the people among their number. Yang went to wake her up so that she could help her to her room, but she stopped when she saw Mina sit down next to the dark-haired girl, jostling her awake. Something in the pink girl's eyes told Yang that she'd be better off heading up to her own room sooner instead of later, so she quietly made her way up the hall with the others. She passed by Weiss, who was leaning against the wall with her gaze pointed downward, causing her friend to wonder if she hadn't fallen asleep. She went to tap the thin girl on the shoulder to wake her up, but Weiss held up a finger to her lips and shook her head before she raised her eyes just enough for Yang to see them flick toward where Blake and Mina were sitting. Understanding the unspoken message, Yang nodded and moved on to get to the elevator before it left without her. Meanwhile, Mina waited for the area to be clear before she addressed the stirring girl sitting next to her with the words, "You doing okay?" "No, but I suppose I'll get there eventually," she mumbled as she rubbed her eyes sluggishly. "What time is it?" "Late," the pink heroine replied. "Everyone else just went up to bed." "Well, thanks for waking me up." Blake sighed as she started to get up, only to finally see the hardened look in Mina's eyes, which led her to sit back down. "I'm guessing you didn't do that for altruistic purposes." "Nope," Mina answered, her tone remaining neutral enough. There was nothing hostile in her bearing other than the look in her eyes, which wasn't even directed at Blake. Even so, the raven-haired girl knew that something was about to happen between them, and there was no way to escape it. "I assume we need to talk," she said as she straightened herself up on the couch, directing her gaze so that both of them were staring at their reflections in the window. "Yep," Mina nodded briefly. "I'll give you 3 guesses about what, and the last 2 don't count." Blake was quiet for a moment, trying to ignore the dryness in her mouth before she murmured, "I didn't think you'd noticed." "I didn't? Not until recently," Mina admitted as she allowed herself a brief sidelong glance at the other girl. "He definitely hasn't." "I know," Blake said, maintaining her lowered tones. "I don't want him to know either." Mina relaxed at that just a little bit. "Good," she said firmly. "How'd you know?" "You look almost as messed up as I feel," Mina answered with a slightly bitter chuckle. "At first I thought it was just because you felt responsible, but it didn't take me long to realize it was more than that, especially since he was the only one who was able to convince you to come out of your room." "Is this the part where you're going to tell me to stay away from him?" Blake asked, deciding that she'd rather cut to the quick than dance around the subject of her own tangled emotions. "Would you stay away from him if I did?" Mina inquired, her tone becoming serious again. "Yes." "Then no," she shrugged. "It's not like I can't understand how you feel. There's a lot to like, after all. I'm not going to punish you and him for something that you can't control, Belladonna. Besides, it's not like I can actually tell him who he can and can't hang out with, nor would it be right. He considers you a friend, and I'm hoping someday I'll look at you that way too. Kind of hard to be friends with a girl who has feelings for your boyfriend, isn't it? Blake said a little bitterly. I get it, really. I want him to be happy, and for whatever it's worth, I know you're the best person to make that happen for him. That, and I'd like it if you could be happy too. I appreciate that, Mina said with a slightly dry smile. I just wanted to make sure we both had everything out in the open. I don't like having to tiptoe around awkward stuff. This isn't awkward, Blake asked with a slightly raised eyebrow. This is probably the most awkward thing that's ever happened to me, Mina admitted as she forced herself to stand up. But like I said, I prefer to know where we both stand. Wish I could say the same, Blake said under her breath. Shaking her head when Mina raised an eyebrow at her, she added, Sorry, that was ugly of me to say. Let me know if I'm crossing any lines and I'll back off. I appreciate that, Mina said as she started toward the elevator. There's just one thing. Blake's voice stopped her so that she turned to look over her shoulder at the dark-haired girl, who was giving her a piercing glare with her golden eyes as she said, If you ever hit him, mistreat him again like you did the other night, all bets are off. I'll go for it. Both of Mina's eyebrows went up, but all she said in response was, That does happen. You can do what you want, but I wouldn't hold my breath, girl.
In the shadows I've grown, in my struggles I've shown, I'll never back down for anyone. You think that this is the end, I've just begun. Through my life I've been gentle, but I know it's in my mental. Stop, need a moment, a component. I try to show it, so soft spoken. Am I broken? No. Who's my next opponent? Every moment pushes me to focus harder, show I can do anything I set my mind to. No obstacle I can't push through.
So that was a chapter and a half.
Yeah, that was heavy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I said phase 5 was not going to be sunshine and rainbows. I don't know if anybody took me seriously.
Yeah. Well, when you opened, it was funny because it opened, with a question, and it was a very similarly phrased question to the opening of another chapter of another story you've been writing. And so I was like, at first I was a little confused what
It
story
opens
you
up
were
with him
reading.
saying, I don't think I can do this. And then Akuru's like, I'm not giving you a choice.
Yeah, and there's another chapter.
You're going to have
that
to tell
starts,
me what chapter
yeah, I'll
that
have to
is.
tell
Like, 'cause
you.
I'm honestly drawing a blank on that.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
was like, the context, it makes more sense, but
Okay.
I think what in retrospect, it's basically that, but in a question and opening a chapter. So
Okay.
I was like, oh, he's reading me that again. Okay, that's fine, cool. And then you were launching into this, and I was like, oh yeah, that. So
I
yeah.
honestly don't remember what you're talking about. Oh, that just shows where my brain's at.
That's all right. That was really random and vague. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. So we have like,
Bakugo had to punch somebody.
yeah. I mean, and he deserved it.
Yep,
So
he definitely did. I was like, he needs to get punched. Bakugo's earned it at this point.
yeah, absolutely. So that being
So is it like in a low key kind of way? It kind of reminds me that there's an episode like in like the first season of Voltron on Netflix where Keith and Lance like they have this bonding moment, and then the next episode Lance just wants to pretend that it didn't happen. He's like, "We had a bonding moment. I cradled you in my arm. I don't remember. It didn't happen." So it's basically that's kind of what's going on right now. Is like Kurai's just like, really, dude? And he's like, I don't. Bakugo's like, I'm so disappointed, and he's like, I don't have to justify myself to you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, that's like that's a very like Naruto Sasuke moment. Like we have this filler where we're suddenly really good friends, and then right back to, I hate you.
Well, like Bakugo, here's a weird way to look at it: is like Bakugo only like admitted to himself and started thinking about Kurai as his friend after he had died.
Mm-hmm.
So from Bakugo's standpoint, aside from being really annoyed at him, he's got to be feeling real confused about like, okay, how do I handle this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He doesn't know how to be a friend right now.
No.
Yeah, but I mean, very long-winded and necessary apology.
Multiple
Absolutely.
apologies.
Yeah, which was good. And then
Deku flipped out.
yeah, so we've got, of course, poor Deku experiencing, the side effects of Energon happening. So
Yeah, that I was trying to figure out the timing for that was kind of difficult, and I realized that if I didn't do it now, it was going to be too easy for it to be just a thing of like, oh, I know how to use the power because I've seen somebody else do it.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I needed to like the like, so from a narrative stance, the side effects of overusing the power, not being used to the power, they needed to kick in right about now and give everybody a harsh reminder. Of like, no, this is like the easy part's not. It's like there's nothing easy about any of this. Like all of this is going to be difficult. Like I decided to use Dakaru, and Yairo's just like, wait, I thought we fixed his quirk. It's like, no, I didn't fix his quirk. I fixed him to be able to use his quirk.
Yeah.
It's like, now we got to do it for him.
Yep.
But yeah, he can't bibbity boppity boo this one. He's gonna have to actually work on it,
Which
and
sucks.
it sucks, but you can also kind of tell that Akaru's kind of enjoying it. Like he has this moment where he's like, I'm not on a ruthless timetable anymore. I can actually enjoy working on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
definitely.
he's gonna put effort into it. He's gonna work hard on it, but he's not like if I don't finish it this week, I may never get another chance. Because like that's how he's been for a while. He's like, he doesn't know if his health is going to take a bad turn at any given point. Now he's, the tumor's still there.
He's got an idea of how much he can take, so he can pace himself and not overuse the quirk. Hopefully,
but he's like, I'm not gonna boost my quirk on purpose again.
Absolutely.
He's like, no freaking way.
Yeah, no, but I mean, anyway, going back to the Deku thing, like, it makes sense because this is probably one of the highest emotional points he's had. Like, I mean, I'm actually more surprised that it didn't happen sooner.
See, here's the thing: is that how do I put this? So specifically, Energon used to go in overdrive when the user was really angry, and there is anger to be had in mourning, but Deku hadn't reached that point yet. Like he's just been like at that kind of like, you know how there's that point in your mourning where you're just like kind of numb to everything. Like you know that you're sad and you're like, you know that you need to process through it, but the actual processing part and the venting of the emotions hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. And I mean,
he didn't get to that point in the morning process.
Everything in the day before too was more shocking than anything.
There wasn't time to get angry. He just had.
Yeah, but now that he's thinking about it, he's like, really, dude? Like, and of course, Deku being the very purest Deku, precious boy he is, we know what makes him tick.
That's All Might's legacy that he handed off, and now he's basically he's seeing it basically in his eyes, because Kurai's just treating it like trash.
Yeah. And
that he doesn't want.
And
he's just like...
And Deku
worked hard to get
and
that.
he gave up everything, and just to have his friend respond this way, he has right to be angry.
Yeah. Kurai has a right to feel the way that he does about the ability. Deku equally has a right to feel as he does to see the power treated this way.
Yeah. So it sucks, but thankfully Akuri can keep an eye on it, and Deku, like, he's generally like,
he's a very emotional person. Like I mentioned, so this is gonna be an interesting training arc.
But he's also a very self-controlled person and an intentional person.
So
I think that with some time he'll be able to. I mean, even just like with the, with Black Whip.
Yeah, he'll learn it faster than Kurai did because his prior experience to draw on. But it's also gonna, like, in his head, it's gonna be an interesting time.
But I mean, like I said, like with the situation with Black Whip, when that manifested, he was able to be like, "Oh, I need to be intentional about my thought life and be very careful about this."
Yeah.
And so I think that having this experience, he'll be able to say, "Okay, I need to reevaluate how I approach things and figure this all out. And so yeah, I don't know.
Honestly, I just feel bad for the classmates at this point because they're just walking. They're living with 2 nukes that are ready to go
I
off.
don't know. Well, 3 including Bakugo, but he's predictable.
You can always expect him to go like with Deku and Kurai. It's just like
There are these 2 sweetie pies who are suddenly being.
I don't know that I'd describe Kurai as a sweetie. He's more mellow.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to call him a sweetie pie. But.
For me as a teacher, if the child is not a kleptomaniac, trying to kill the other kids, I'm good.
You just setting your bars real low there.
I teach in the valley, yo.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right.
Yeah. So, see what else? So things kind of start like things are kind of moving along. Like you can tell things are still real awkward. But you know, Akadori is trying to do what he can to move things along. You know, I'm sure some of you will be excited. You know, Akadori is going to be living on campus now. Yeah, I had I think it was Joe Clone who messaged me. He was like, "Are we going to see Akadori and Mei Hatsume like collaborate soon?" And I'm like, "Be patient, man. It's coming."
Oh, it's coming.
Yes, Akadori and Mei Hatsume will end up in the same room, and Akadori will be a guest lecturer. So try to imagine how that's going to go down.
Oh man, yeah. Some of my favorite moments in this story so far. So you'll.
Oh man, yeah. I remember telling you about that. You were just cackling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Like not quite the same level of cackling that I was doing when I brought Kurai back to life on you guys, but it was in there.
Yeah. So yeah, we have, you know, the promise of more Akarui time. But
Gotta
then
throw something good in there.
we had to, because then we have Blake. And, you know,
That
just
whole
kind
thing.
of that yeah, definitely gonna have to put kind of a trigger warning at the beginning of this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you know, dealing with self-harm, it's such a real thing. And then, of course, as they are definitely children, they do not handle it correctly. So, which is really hard because, you know.
That's what I like about writing these stories is like, how do I put this? These characters are, in their eyes, they're doing the right thing. You know? And to take it to an extreme, you know, every villain also sees themselves as the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
Right? So how hard is it to cross that line, you know? And I like doing these narratives where it's easy to see, like, even these people who have been lauded as the next up-and-coming heroes of their generation are making some really, really stupid choices.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
because they're human.
Yeah, I mean, as, you know, I don't know, you know, in context, obviously this is an imaginary world, but real world situations, you know, when you are made aware of something like that with someone self-harming and putting themselves at risk, you're what's called a mandatory reporter. And so children obviously don't understand and cannot be prosecuted, but you know, once you have the responsibility of being licensed or being an adult in general, you have that responsibility where you will be criminally prosecuted if if someone loses their life and it is clear that you could have done something or talked to somebody about it.
Inform someone
Yes,
who could have dealt with it.
Absolutely. And so, you know, of course, children are not going to do that. And I've seen it time and time again with kids self-harming and with myself. I had a self-harm issue when I was, you know, through high school and later for quite a while, that on and off, it's a struggle. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding it. Is my dog throwing up? No, she's just dreaming. Okay. Oh.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you the tale of Taco the Snorfels.
Oh, Ahsoka. No, that's Ahsoka.
Was that Ahsoka? Ahsoka's the...
She's having a nightmare.
Oh, that's... our dog is kind of funny when she's...
Taco, go wake her up. Tacos, they're really good at waking each other up when they're having nightmares. Look. Oh, yeah. Sweet girls. Okay,
See,
sorry.
If I had a camera that I could turn on, I would have showed you guys that. That was adorable.
That was precious. No, they're both... I've seen both of them do that. It's cute.
Ahsoka, are we giving you nightmares for the subject matter? I'm sorry.
Anyway, gosh, where was I? Oh yeah, that
being an issue.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions around it, because people will tell you that the cutting is a cry for help, and they'll identify that the horizontal cuts are cry for help, vertical cuts are when someone's like actually like intending to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And so, but they'll kind of kind of whitewash it that way when it's a lot more
with a broad brush.
it's much more complex than that.
Yeah.
Because
it is an addiction.
It is absolutely. So there is an endorphin rush when you lose blood, and it's like a happy hormone that gives you a high, literally gives you a high. And so what happened with me was it began as a physical way to focus on something other than emotional pain. Right? It didn't begin as an intent to end everything. It began as, it eventually progressed into that. But for me, it was originally a distraction from the emotional turmoil. If I could focus on something physical, then I wouldn't have to deal with the emotional. And then it gradually progressed. And I hid mine I was really intense about it because I hated it like as a teenager when people did it for attention. I thought it, and it's wild because, even though I was being very selfish by making that decision, I thought that it was selfish when people were doing it for attention.
And they were advertising
and I mean, both are bad though, because on one end it's like, you are putting others in emotional turmoil, distress, for your own edification, and on the other end you're being selfish by not caring that others care about you and want the best for you, right? And so for me, it's it's really serious. And so anybody who's listening to this, like, if you are dealing with something similar, or know of anyone, like, you need to talk to someone. Right? It's very serious. And for me, my best friend, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was probably 15 years old. I'm singing in choir, minding my business, and all of a sudden my best friend grabs my wrist, rips up my arm. We're in the middle of a song. We're in class. We are singing, and my best friend grabs my wrist, rips up my sleeve, and exposes it to our friend group that was all in that little area.
Oof.
And as mortified as I was, it needed to happen because, and then again, kids being kids, no one told an adult. But they, did what they could to support me. And because no one told an adult, I continued to struggle severely with this addiction for years. Until I got like actual psychiatric help, because it had become a physical addiction.
This is a problem from before you met me, like
into
when we knew each other.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it took my loved ones, including you, pushing me into getting intensive therapy for it. And it's it's a really deep-rooted problem, and it's more and more common in our culture. And so kind of coming back to that was a really long tangent, but I think it's important. But coming back to it, it's it is realistic, because more times than not you're going to have at least one child in a group that is dealing with this kind of thing, especially when you have this level of trauma. All right, so we can get from that being said, moving into just kind of the character development aspect here.
Like, he's trying to help her.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be. I mean,
he doesn't want to help anybody.
He's miserable, and he's trying not to be selfish. He's trying to be there, but he's doing it in the most blunt way possible, because he's just like, please don't make me don't make me feel anything more than I'm already feeling. He's for him, he's been, but it is good that he's able to. I know, of course, the blackmail aspect is not okay, because he should be telling the adults so she can get help. But being teenagers, of course, it's not happening here.
No.
But
so
that being said,
I can't have these guys making the right decision every time.
Yeah.
If even half the time. Like growing up being younger, like you're more likely to make mistakes than not.
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, I would not be surprised if any number of people reading this have had the same experience. Because as you know, between being a youth leader and being a teacher, I have had to be a mandatory reporter at least once a semester. And that's not counting between ideations, self-harm, like experiencing abuse. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff that people deal with. And kids, of course, all the kids know. Mm-hmm. They don't tell the adults, but all the kids know. Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, exactly. They're
through here. I was like, no, he's going to find out about this. He's not going to do the right thing. He thinks he's doing the right thing because what happened with him, it worked. Technically,
yeah. And Mina didn't do the right thing either. She should have immediately gotten him help with an adult, and he would have felt betrayed as heck, but it would have been better for him in the long run. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Because look at him now. He's a mess. Yep. Absolutely. Positively a mess.
That's not to say that any number of counseling that would have helped at that point.
Because you have to want help.
You have to want help. You have to want help. But I'm saying, given the stuff that he's gone through since then, I don't know that him being in counseling would have made a whole lot of a difference.
Yeah,
but it would have been better than nothing.
Again, from personal experience, when my family did finally find out about suicide attempts and self-harm and stuff, they put me in therapy. But me being a teenager with hormonal mood swings, I would feel horrible one day. I'd be like, yeah, I need to go. I need to talk about it. And then the day it came, and then I'd be there like,
I'm fine.
I don't know why I'm here. They just made me come. Yeah, I'm fine. And I'd give them all the right answers, and then they'd be like, oh, check. Oh, you're fine. Okay. Yep. And then they'd send me home, and then that would be it. It wasn't until I was an adult and I was able to admit that I needed help, and I was able to be intentional. That was, can you tell it's been a long day? Intentional. I'm adult. Can speak. Am teacher. But it wasn't until I was able to be intentional about working on my own mental health that therapy even did anything. So I mean, and I've seen it too, again, with kids being forced into therapy too, it doesn't always make much of a difference because they have to be sold and they have to be in on it. But yeah, that being said, he's able to kind of weasel his way into getting her down, which poor thing. Oh my gosh. But it just shows what she's going through too, and it's a little taste of what everybody else is dealing with too.
Yeah, I did like the bit where he does tell her he's just kind of commiserating with her. He's like, oh, they care about us, isn't that so nice? It's like, don't you just hate it?
Yeah. No,
it's
some of the
they both know it's good that they have these people who are worried about them and love them, but it just seems so annoying.
Yeah,
at the time.
when you are in the midst of your self-loathing
and you just want to be miserable,
it's annoying to realize that you don't want to accept that you're being selfish by self-loathing. But that's the thing about self-loathing. It's self-focused, which is selfish. The only way to get out of self-loathing is to focus on others and loving others and building others up. Not to say you don't care for your own needs, but I think that's one of the most important lines to draw is there's a difference between humbleness and self-deprecation. Being humble means not being obnoxious and still being able to go out and help people. You know your worth, but you're not wearing it on your sleeve, and you are just using it for others and to pour into others. Yeah. Self-loathing is me, and not caring what anybody else thinks, despite the fact that you have people who love you and are affected by your pity party. And, it sounds really insensitive, but I say it because I've been there. And that has been me many, many times.
You and me both.
Yeah, we both. I mean, thankfully, we are both aware of it and can call each other out when it's happening, which is really necessary. But it's good to surround yourself with people who are aware of that and can help you. But yeah, so they're both having their pity party and being very, honestly, in all reality, they're both being very selfish right now.
Yep.
But in their own way, they're trying, even though they're not feeling it, their head's not in it, their heart's not in it. They're going through the motions, and they're trying.
At least they're not like, well, she was isolating, and he's like, okay, at least he's able to see us like, okay, we can't sink this far.
Yeah. 90% of success is just showing up, and so at least starting to go through the motions is something.
Yeah.
So he drags her down. Even though he didn't actually drag her down, but
He
blackmailed her down.
Yep. Yep.
And the rest of the evening at least is awkward but somewhat pleasant for everyone until we have
the
talk. Oh man. That one, yeah, this is like this whole chapter was like super emotionally like triggering for me. Like at every turn. Oh yeah. Between poor Deku being triggered and then, of course the self-harm thing and then this talk.
Like, small side note, like Kurai seeing his power like almost explode in Deku. And he's just, and like, if Deku's brain had like done the aneurysm,
that's got to be
like,
a wake-up call.
A would have been a wake-up call, and B, he's on the verge of like, oh my, he would have been like, I killed him now.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, him seeing Deku like go through the same physical struggles that he went through. He's just like, oh no, I did this to him.
Oh.
Yay, more trauma.
Yeah, let's but I mean for me, I see it as okay, here's a motivator. I need to get my head out of my butt and help my friend because I've dealt with this and I'm the only one who knows how to help him. Right?
Yeah, he will help Deku with his new
Yeah, awesome.
Like he's not that cold.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, so we get to the super awkward talk. Ouch.
Yeah, that needed to happen at this point.
And I think it's easy to relate to both of them.
Oh yeah?
Because I've been in both of their shoes.
Really?
Yes. And so it's very frustrating and infuriating on both ends. Because on one end, I think I hate the me that behaved like Blake. Because I have in every way been that person. Thankfully, I'm not overt enough about it that other people really, if they noticed, they didn't say anything. So I never had to have that conversation.
The only people who noticed were like Blake's best friends, like the people that have been with her all this time, and Mina because she pays, and that's more because she pays attention to Kurai and how he affects people around him.
So on one end, it's like it's really easy to.
Blake wasn't being obnoxious about it.
No, she wasn't. But for me personally, it is obnoxious because even my closest friends were not aware. Because my closest friends were the Mina in the situation, all right? So, yeah. But, that's like on one end, I can sympathize with her. But, for me, being closer to the Mina end of the spectrum at this point in my life, it's also really easy to be super irritated with Blake and be like, you suck, because I am that kind of protective person and I've had to have that conversation with someone before.
I honestly thought it was a pretty sane discussion to
have
it
went very well.
Mina was just like, this is the line in the sand, don't step over it.
And Blake says
Blake was like, all right, I won't go near it.
Yeah,
unless
I appreciated how respectful Blake was and how well she articulated that. And she's like, look, though, if you do anything to make him unhappy, forget it. Like, all bets are off.
Yep.
And so, so that made sense. But me as someone who has had to have that conversation with someone.
I think I know who you're talking
about. Oh, yeah.
About.
No, I mean, there was a time when we were dating when there was an individual who was getting a little bit, it was clear. Like, the whole moping.
Apparently not to me.
Oh, no. There was, like, really possessive over you. There was the whole moping in public whenever we were together. It was so obvious. It was so obvious, and it killed me.
For those of you who can't see me, I'm throwing my hands up in the air because I didn't know.
Yeah, so I had to have this conversation with a girl at one point, and it hurt because I'm like, yeah, I get what you see in him. I adore him. Like, the whole thing Mina says, like, yeah, I don't blame you. He's awesome. He's
But he's
also
mine.
mine, you know? And so I
got here first.
and you know, I think I did it in a very tactful way.
Knowing you, yeah.
I think I did it, but you know, it's still, I'm sure it still really hurt, poor thing. Like, again, because I've been in those shoes, I get it. I mean, I haven't, again, I'm not obnoxious though, so in general, unless I'm in my element. Like here I'm obnoxious. Other places I'm not usually. But yeah, sorry, this has been kind of a me. But what I was saying was, you know, that part.
You put pieces yourself in those chapters as well.
No, that part. Well, you wrote that, and I was just like, when you told me you were going to write it, it was like nails on a chalkboard in my brain.
Say, you looked like nails on chalkboard.
It was nails on a chalkboard in my brain because it's really awkward and really painful, and I've been on both sides of that, so I hate it.
In terms of the narrative, like was it convincing enough, like coming from either angle?
I mean, again, I think it worked, and I think with the maturity level, it made sense because Mina has shown like really, you know, pretty high emotional intelligence is for someone her age, and so, you know, despite her quirkiness, like, but in this canon, that it made sense. I would say events
in this canon have led to that development a little bit more than in the original.
Yeah, and so it was painful for me for sure, and I'm sure other people relate to one or the other to some degree. That was hard. Yeah.
Next chapter should be a little bit more lighthearted.
Yeah, that one was a lot.
Next one's a Christmas chapter.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. We're gonna have little Airy meet big Airy in that one. I'm trying to think of what else I can say that's like not super spoilery. Yeah, I'm not gonna say any more than that. There's gonna be some cute stuff happening.
I'm so excited, and I don't remember that part, so I'm excited to hear it again. Yeah.
Well, as always, guys, thank you so much for listening to our podcast and sticking through us with the story. This is the 85th chapter of this. This is the 86th.
That's
podcast
like the most depressing podcast.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, just go re-listen to reviews or something. I don't know. If they're good, I don't know.
I don't know. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us, and we'll catch you on the next one. Have a Plus Ultra couple of weeks. Actually, no, wait. Announcement. We're going to double up this coming week. So,
because we got behind.
Yeah, we got behind a few weeks back, so we're going to go ahead and double up. We're going to, instead of waiting 2 weeks, we will release the next podcast on the next weekend. So, look forward to that.
Lord willing. Nothing crazy happens again.
I'm gonna do it.
I hope, Lord willing, we will be able to start doubling up until we're caught up.
All right, guys. We'll have a Plus Ultra week. Until the next one.